WNP News producer Sydney Bowles, and you're watching another edition of our monthly series with Town Administrator Paul Sagarino, where we dig into all the big stories going on in town government. So here we are again. Paul, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Sydney.
So, big month, lots been going on. I want to start with some of our capital projects, as we so often do. The police station has been interesting. I can't remember if we had the original designs the last time we spoke, but we're starting to see some pictures. So what do you think, starting to look at some of those sketches?
Yeah, I'm really excited about the entire project. You know, we have the best police department in the state, in my opinion. They've been working in poor conditions for many years now, and I just think it's imperative that we provide them with a modern facility. I mean, a facility that lives up to the level of expertise that our police department has, and they are fantastic, so they should be working out of a fantastic facility. So really excited about the project.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you say modern, because you can tell watching the meetings, talking to folks, that there is a desire for a modern station, but also a modern station that looks in some ways in line with our sort of traditional campus feel.
Absolutely. Didn't want to give the viewers the wrong impression. You know, modern on the inside, but it's going to look very colonial on the outside if we're blessed to have the approval of town meeting. It's going to blend in perfectly with the town common, the existing town campus, the Grandview Farm to the right of it. So we're really excited because you can make a state-of-the-art facility and they can make it look however you want it to look. So we've seen a bunch of different designs. We do know that it falls in the town center overlay district, which will require a colonial style look, and we're perfectly fine with that. So we're really excited.
So, as you say, if town meeting approves this spending, there's a couple more decisions to make. There's the question of how to finance this, and my recollection is that Ways and Means Committee Chair John Eiler has been saying that it would be good financial planning of us to go to voters and ask for a debt exclusion. What do you make of that recommendation?
I give John and the Ways and Means a lot of credit. We've been working with them. We have two major projects upcoming, the police station and the Fox Hill School. Everybody in town is aware of that. A couple big ticket items for us, and I think, if anything, what John is looking to do, and what I applaud him for, is I think town meeting is going to be looking to us appointed and elected officials to come up with a plan as to how to finance these two projects. If you've talked to anybody about the financing for these projects, everybody has a different opinion. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but I feel like if we don't go to town meeting on the same page, that really won't do either of the projects justice. It's very complicated. It's not quite as complicated to me. I've been working in this field for 29 years, but to the average resident, they sort of don't understand the terminology: debt exclusion, Prop 2.5, override, borrowing, bonding. So I think we need to, in order to have the best chance of success, I think that it would be great if all the boards and committees and the administration, we all get on the same page and present a unified front to town meeting, so the town meeting can just do its best to vet the projects, vote them up and down individually, but understand that there is a plan to handle the financing of them if town meeting wishes to move forward with those projects. So that's the important thing to me, is very complicated. I can't imagine that town meeting would go well if there was not some sort of consolidated plan amongst all the officials together as one. And I think that that's the best chance of success as we move forward.
Do you want to give explain to me like I'm 12 kind of explanation of a debt exclusion for the police station?
Yeah, debt exclusion is a term when you go to the voters and ask for the debt on these projects to not be included in our Proposition 2.5 calculation. So if you approve the projects, the taxpayer is going to pay the same amount of money under either scenario, whether we do a debt exclusion or if we don't do a debt exclusion. The cost to the taxpayers remains the same. What a debt exclusion does is allow us to not include this debt when we're calculating the limitations of Proposition 2.5 on the town's budget going forward. If we do these projects without a debt exclusion, if things don't go well in the commercial sector and the local economy, we could be up against it in 6 or 7 years budgetarily, because now we have this large mortgage in our budget that we have to pay, and it could lead to budget cuts in other areas. So probably the simplest way I could say it is, if you approve the projects, you pay the same amount under either scenario. If you approve the debt exclusion, that provides the town with future budget relief as we move forward, and does not limit our ability to provide the services that the residents would like from the town.
Okay, I think we're going to be hearing a lot of the explain like I'm 12 version of what a debt exclusion is in the next year or so, like as we all sort of try to wrap our heads around this. I know I've talked with John Eiler, I've talked with you, and I feel like I'm sort of starting to get there, but it is wonky, it is.
It is, it's a lot of funny terminology. I think that if you're able to spend a little bit of time with somebody, maybe with a pencil and a pad of paper, and just sort of explain sort of how it works under either scenario, I think it's a little bit easier to understand. But like I say, I've been doing this for a long time, so the language is second nature to me, but I know from talking to residents that there's a lot of confusion out there as to how it works, and that's to be expected. Like I say, as you said, it's very wonky.
So lots of learning to be done for folks over the next year. But there's other matters. I was really fascinated to hear a conversation recently about if the project gets approved for the police station, what happens to the police department for the, maybe 2 years-ish of construction? All those folks are going to have to go somewhere. The very complicated operations of a police department are just going to have to move. So how are you talking about this with Chief Thomas Brown about what happens here?
Yeah, well, one of the things we're going to have to consider is where to relocate the police department. If we get approval for a new facility, we'll have to move them all out, and as you mentioned, still function as a police department. There's plenty of examples of that throughout the state. Pretty much, not all towns have extra space to move people in while you're building a building. So, some of the things that are under consideration would be some type of trailer farm. Certainly, they had enough parking, or to lease office space for a period of time. So you're basically talking about bare bones office space, no locker rooms, no shower facilities, things of that nature. Lexington is currently building a police station, and we book their prisoners for them. So we make arrangements with other departments for, we're not going to have jail cells in an office building. So one of our neighboring communities would likely receive any prisoners that we may have and things of that nature. But there's plenty. It is complicated, and it is going to be a challenge for the department during that time that they would theoretically be out of a real police station. But at the same time, I think everyone just being so excited about the project, we've managed to get through, and there's plenty of examples of where this was done elsewhere in Massachusetts. And like I say, Lexington is dealing with it now, and all the neighboring departments step up to help in different ways that they can. And we're expecting the same type of treatment from our neighbors as we move forward. So,
Jim Tigas, I think, had the suggestion of relocating a trailer farm to was it Mill Pond?
Vinebrook.
Vinebrook, yeah, of course. What do you think about that? Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, we'd have to take a look at the space.
Yeah.
I mean, we plan to decommission that plant, so it won't be in use. So it will be a usable piece of space. It's not that pretty. If you've ever driven down back there, it's kind of in the middle of the swamp. But like I say, I think we realize it's not going to be luxurious accommodations for a couple years, and everybody's just going to have to manage as best we can. And it's definitely a viable location from what I can see in terms of where we might be able to very easily locate something like this on our own property and possibly save a few dollars with that as well.
All right, Town Administrator Paul Sagarino, I'm going to let you go in a minute, but I want to tackle one last project real quick. There's a new policy in the work, hasn't been approved, just sort of thinking around the edges of this. New traffic calming measures, speed humps and speed tables. Why haven't we talked about this before? Well,
it's only been very recently that the uniform manual traffic, I'm going to get the abbreviation wrong, but
it's like
it's
the
basically
Bible,
the
right?
engineering Bible for street signs and how you handle your streets. It's a federal document, and we work really hard to try to stay within those regulations, because as soon as you make an exception to a rule, it makes it easier. And those were recently accepted into the federal Bible, speed tables. So we've never really looked at them in the past because they weren't compliant with those policies, but we are looking at them now, and we're trying to figure out how to make it right for Burlington. They're very useful in certain applications.
I feel like, just to clarify what we're talking about, I feel like people have probably seen these in other towns, right? It's like very, very sort of longer, low little bumps that you go over, not as abrupt as a speed bump, but a longer, more gradual.
Yeah, they're intended to be driven over at the speed of the road. So
Okay.
they're not intended for you to slow down and stop and go over like a speed bump.
Mm-hmm.
They're intended for you to drive over, but they also, are very visible, and people will generally stick to the speed limit if they see something like that, as opposed to shooting over it. And I just think, like I say, I think it's important. We've got a lot of feedback at the last select board meeting, and we think they may be useful in certain areas of town, but like everything else, we do hear complaints about cars all over town in every different neighborhood, near schools, not near schools, and I just think we need to be very thoughtful about where these should go and where they'll be most useful, because I feel like we will get a lot of requests for them all over town once we start putting them in. Number one, they're quite expensive, and number two, the roads in some cases, are meant for car travel. I know that's very difficult for the residents to deal with, but that's exactly what the roads are. They're for traveling of vehicles, and we want to make them as safe as possible, but still understand that the purpose of the road is for a person to get from one area to the other as well. So it's a tough balancing act. And,
Right.
I think a lot of residents would just assume ban cars from the roads. And like I say, as a human being and a person who lives on a busy road, I certainly understand where that sentiment comes from. But we need to try to balance it out with what the purpose of the roads are. So.
Yeah. There's, I think there's a lot to be established, it seems like, in terms of where these are applicable, where they might not be the right fit, and then how to fund them, because you can't just put them on every road, financially or logistically.
Yeah, and just the thing that I've learned on dealing with traffic issues, Sydney, is, you may hear from a group of neighbors that say, for example, want a stop sign put in one place. And you may think that that's like everybody in the neighborhood wants a stop sign there. And once the stop sign goes up, you start hearing from the other half of the neighbors who are like, why do we put this stupid stop sign here? There's no reason to have to stop in that area. So there's very rarely is a unanimous unanimous by a neighborhood. So I think that that's an important component, that we get really a large proportion of people on board with a petition for one of those before we go putting them in, because like I say, that's been my experience. You hear from a group of neighbors and you say, wow, we really need this here, and then you put in the solution, and then you start hearing from the neighbors across the street who hate the solution and they want it removed. So it's a tough balancing act.
All right, so lots more to discuss here. I feel like this one is going to be something that a lot of people are really interested in as we move forward, so
Definitely.
I'm sure we'll talk about it again. But for now, thank you as always for stopping in.
Oh, thanks for having me, Sydney.
This has been another edition of Town Administrator Update with Paul Sagarino. I'm Sydney Bowles.